everybody, welcome back to another practical and useful video on my channel. Today I'm going to talk about one of the most important topics that many C# developers either avoid or sometimes don't understand, and even worse, use it in a wrong way. I'm going to talk about generic constraint. Have you ever written a generic constraint or a generic method that you want to do some basic action like, for example, compare two number, or sometimes call a method like save? In situation like this, the compilers say, hey, I have no idea about T and I don't know what it can do. Let me be honest with you. Sometimes I want to be honest. The real power of generic is not that it can accept anything. The real power is you put some real limitation on it. In this video, you will learn how to use generic constraint, and you will tell the compiler not any type allow in this class or method. By the end of this video, you will learn how to create some cleaner and some useful generic classes or generic method and more professional. Let's get started. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Let's do it. Now, it's time to talk about the generic constraint. When you are creating a generic class like this, when you are writing T in a generic class or generic method, you are basically saying that every type is allowed. But in a situation like this, the compiler cannot make any assumption about T. But when you are creating a generic constraint or you are writing word T column person, the compiler say, now the story changed. Now I know everything is at least a person. Now I know the method, I know the property of the person class, and now I have an intelligence smart. What is a generic constraint? Generic constraint is a contract between you and compiler. You guarantee or you promise T has a special method, property, or a special ability, and in return of that, the compiler will allow you to use those ability. But if someone break that contract or that law, you will get a compile time error. Let me give you some real example. Here I want to use a generic method. Here I will pass two items as a generic in this method, but I will get a red underline error. What happened here? Here the compiler say, hey, how you can guarantee it? How can I know that this for example, this parameter support greater sign operator, or if you, for example, smaller sign operator? What happened if someone pass a, for example, instance of class or pass a object? Because here, when you want to find a max, for example, you are using int string, but you cannot find a max between two instances of the classes. What happened if someone pass, for example, instance of this class? In situation like this, you will get a compile time error. What should we do in situation like this? We should use generic constraint, because the generic constraint guarantee that every parameter we pass to this method will support the greater sign operator. Now, let me give you a very good example. Now, when you are creating a generic method, it's exactly like you are using the system.object namespace. You are using an object. What does it mean? Here, if I come here, and let me remove all of them. And if I come here and say object, something like this, and say obj dot, here I have four special methods: get type equal to a string and get hash code. You know, every classes in C# are inheritance from the object namespace, object classes. What does it mean? I'm using, for example, get type. Okay. If I come here and create, for example, int operator, int variable, and give 25. If I say a dot, I will access those four methods. What does it mean? It's get type, get hash code, and to a string. And now I access those four methods. They are coming from the object class. When you are creating a method, generic method, it's like an object. But when you are using generic constraint, you guarantee those, for example, interface, for example, constants, those class constants, those struct constant has a special ability, and in return of that, the compiler let you to use those ability. Now, it's time to define some real generic constants, and now I wanted to tell you how you can define a generic constant. By the end of this video, be sure you will know everything about the generic. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Now it's time to talk about how we can define a generic constraint in a class. It has three parts. First of all, we have to use a special keyword is where. After that is generic parameter. Here is t. And after that column, here you have to say what constant you want to use as a generic constant. Here I'm saying class. In the next section, I will tell you what is the class, struct, interface, not constant in the C#. Here, now I have created a very basic generic constant. But there's a question. Can we have only one constant? No, you can have more than one constant. Here I have created a constant. Here I have used a basic class constant. Here I say I will pass you those instances that inherit from the person class. And I also want to say, for example, I savable in a constant interface. Here I have more than one generic constants. Now it's time to solve this problem in this method with the generic constant and also talk about these generic constants. They are so important. Class, struct, constructor, interface, not, and base class constants. Now let's do it. Now it's time to know the exactly generic constants. They are the most important one in generic constant. The first one is where class. That's the most common constant in C#. Here, I come here, I have created here. It's a generic constant is class. It said only reference type is allowed. What is reference type? It's like classes, record, string, list, but int, double, chart, they are not allowed because they are value type. When would you use it? When you are to be sure only the reference type are passing to this class and you want to know the null is allowed and when you don't want any unnecessary boxing. Here I have created a class and I have a generic constant of type class. If I come here, I have created here the string is a reference type, but what happened if I change it to this? I will get a red underline because I will get a compile time error. Say, hey, there's a generic constant is class. You are not allowed to passing int because the int is a value type. The next one is struct. If I come here, struct means only the value type is allowed. When would you use it? When you are working with the mathematic library or, for example, the performance critical code are so important. Here, if I change it to something like this, now I won't get any error here because the int is a value type. And now I'm allowed to pass the number because the generic constant is struct. The third one is so important, new. What does it mean? It say here, if I come here and say something like this, it say, hey, any type is allowed, but there is one condition. There is one condition and it's saying the class should have only one public parameterless constructor. What does it mean? It means something like this. It's a public parameterless constructor. If that class don't have a parameterless constructor, you will get a compile time error. But there is a condition that's so important. If I come here, let me find it here. If you want to use this constant with another constant, for example, something like this, you will get an error. It say, hey, there's a very golden rule. When you are using this constant that's related to the constructor, it should come at the last because there is a so important rule. Don't forget to do that. Now I don't have any error. And here, if I come here I have a method. I got an error. What does it do? It return an instance of that class. But here I got an error because the compiler say I cannot guarantee those class or those instance I want to return that have a public constructor. Here I'm saying, hey, don't forget, don't worry. I want to guarantee any type that I am passing to you have a public constructor. Now I don't have any error. If I pass any instance that don't have any parameterless constructor, I will get an error. The fourth one is interface. What does it mean? It say, hey, if you want to use a generic constant of type interface, you're guaranteed that any instance, any type that I'm passing to you will implement this interface. Here I have created very basic interface, IComparable. I have a very basic method is save. Here in the person, I have implemented this interface on the person class. If I come here, for example, in the repository here, I have an error. The compiler say, hey, I am like object. I have only 4 methods. Here I cannot make any assumption that you will have a save method. I say don't worry. The generic constants is for situation like this, where now I have to guarantee the interface have a save method. What interface is savable? Here I have shown you the IComparable have a save method, and here I have guaranteed that any instance I'm passing to you will have the save method. If I come here and give you a very good example, repository, if I say repository.process, now here, for example, let me create another class. So easy. In class, say not pass, for example, something like this. If I change it to public and just have a basic property, no something else, something like this. Okay, this class don't implement the IComparable interface. If I come here and create an instance of person class, the class who implement the interface, and create a not pass instance, those class who doesn't implement. If I pass the person, I won't get any error because this class implement the interface IComparable, and here I have say I am guarantee that any instance will implement this interface. In return of that, the compiler let me to use this save method. Okay, if I come here and pass another method that who doesn't implement the interface, here I have got a red underline error. It say, hey, there is no implicit interface. Here I need a casting. I told you, generally comes to solve the type safety, and I should have any casting. Here you can solve it with the object and casting, but it's so ugly, and it's related to the C#2 version. Here, that's the power of interface. And if I come here I have another method. Here, this one, I got an error. Here I come here, don't worry. I want to guarantee any parameter that I am passing IComparable. Here, what does IComparable do? IComparable guarantee that any parameter we are passing to this method support the greater sign operator. Did you see? Now I don't have any error. For this one in C#8, if I'm not wrong, we have an interface INumber. INumber guarantee that any parameter we are passing support plus operator. For example, set t. Now I have no error. And another one is notnull. After C#8, you can use the constant that you can, for example, guarantee that you won't have any null in your class. For example, if I come here and just say, for example, not null, and now just another generic constant. And the last one is so important. Base class like person. If I come here and say person, now I'm saying, hey, I have a generic constant. I want to guarantee any instance I'm passing will inherit from this person class. Okay, if I come here and not pass, and for example, say, for example, I want to inherit from this person, and here I have this constant. If I come to program and pass here, the process now is okay. Why? It's so important. The process here say I need to have those classes that implement IComparable. I come here. The not pass doesn't implement the interface, but because it inherits from the person, and the person is the parent class of the this child class, and implement the interface, now the role is passed and I have no error. That's so important. That's so important. Here, did you see I get an underline error because I have a constant. It say, hey, I have to pass the item is inherit from the person class. If I pass it, for example, say not pass, and this one, now we will have no error. That's the power of generic constant. And here, for example, I say not pass. Did you see? Did you see the generic are so easy? They are easy with this channel, with Hossein, because I have 14 years of experience in C Sharp, and I know what's the very darkness side of the C Sharp program. I know the generic are so bad. I know the delegate are that's awful, and I know the event is so bad, and a lot of C Sharp developer afraid of to encounter with the delegate, generic constraint, generic class, generic method. Now it's time to summarize this episode because we are at the end. If I want to summarize generic constraints in one sentence, I will say generic give you the flexibility, but generic constraints give you flexibility role. If you don't define any constraints on your generic class or generic method, the compiler knows nothing about T. But when you are defining a constraint on your class or method, the compiler know what exactly T is capable of. As a result, you will have very smarter intelligence, safer code, and many errors that caught at the compile time error. In the next time that you will see a word T and constants, you won't see as a syntax. You will see it as a contract between you and the compiler. You are promising, you are guarantee that, hey, compiler, I will guarantee that this ability is for example, exists in this class, in this method, and anything like this. And in return of that, the compiler will give you those ability. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. In the next video, we are talking about the delegate. I will show you the delegate. They are not hard. They are easy to learn, but with the channel of Hossein. Goodbye.